There's only one game between ranked teams in Week 7, but it's a big one. The two best teams in the SEC meet Saturday, but perhaps not for the only time, as many expect them to face off again in the SEC title game. Crimson Tide trying to rebound after allowing 48 points to Ole Miss, albeit in a winning effort, while the Bulldogs have been dominant, winning their first 3 SEC games by an average of 24 points. We welcome in SEC on CBS sideline reporter Jamie Erdahl. Hello, Jamie.
Hey, how's it going?
I hope you're enjoying Alabama when you get there. Many feel this could be an SEC championship game preview. What makes these two the best teams in the conference?
I think it's their defenses, honestly, and I know it's the old cliche, but for these two programs, it rings true. It's defenses wins championships. I think this weekend as a whole for the conference is massive, with LSU playing Florida. Dan Mullen's pretty pissed off in Gainesville about losing to Texas A&M, a close one last weekend. That feels to me like a pretty defining moment in the SEC East. And so for this game, Alabama-Georgia definitely feels like a preview if when you look at the rest of the schedule and how the conference has already shaken out with LSU 2 losses under its belt already. This does feel like we're looking ahead to December 19th at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta.
Well, now to one of the most incredible statistics in college football. Nick Saban has never lost a game to one of his former assistants. He's 21-0, including an SEC championship win over Kirby Smart. Why is Saban so dominant over his former pupils?
Listen, if you're Nick Saban, you're not going to give all the keys to the kingdom up at the same time when you're the boss of all these guys. I mean, your job as a head coach is not only be to coach to players, but also to cultivate young talent in a coaching spectrum. And sure, I think it's very complimentary to Nick Saban that he's had all these guys go on to take on head coaching jobs at major institutions, but that doesn't mean that he has lessened his skill set as a head coach over all these years. I find it quite comical. I mean, the number 21 is amazing, but it's quite comical to me that we think it would have been so easy for an up-and-coming coach, which really what these guys were for a long time at these other programs, could just come into Nick Saban's house and beat him as easily as they could. Lane Kiffin certainly gave him a run for his money last weekend with Ole Miss, but he always has a little bit more up his sleeve, and honestly, I'm not surprised. But I do think this Kirby Smart Georgia team, they may have the trick this weekend.
Well, his defense better have something up their sleeve after what happened last week. As I mentioned, Ole Miss nearly dropping 50 on them. In fact, the 111 total points between the two teams were the most ever in a regular season SEC game. What's the main reason for Bama's defensive struggles?
Say honestly, I think it was a fluke. I spoke with Najee Harris, the running back for Alabama, yesterday, and he just kind of put it up to Lane Kiffin. They run a fast offense. I mean, they were going nonstop, snap after snap, and that makes it tough for any defense, let alone an Alabama defense, to get set and be able to face an offense like Ole Miss has. Now, does that make good excuses for giving up 648 yards? Absolutely not. If you're Nick Saban, but honestly, if I'm Georgia, I'm a little worried that this is the game that Alabama had before they faced the Bulldogs, because at this point they're about to spend 5 or 6 days shoring up every issue they had in that Alabama defense before they faced Georgia, and that'd be a problem if I was Stetson Bennett at quarterback for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I have a feeling Nick Saban is going to be hoarse by the time this game rolls around from screaming all week at his team. Georgia, on the other hand, has been stellar defensively. What's been the key to their success, and how do they slow Bama down?
Just building on top of experience year after year. This defense slowly but surely has turned itself into, I'll say it, the best defense in college football in the country this season. They were solid last year. There are some ridiculous numbers when it comes to their -1 rushing yards against Tennessee. Are you kidding me? How many attempts did the Volunteers have for Georgia to stuff them so many times they ended up with -1 rushing yards in an entire game? I mean, that is remarkable. But you are facing a pretty talented running back, as I mentioned, in Najee Harris for Alabama. But the thing is, Georgia, they play 17, 18, 19 guys. When we met with Dan Lanning, the defensive coordinator, last weekend, there was a running joke from Brad and Gary that, why don't you just tell us the guys that aren't going to play, because Georgia rolls out so many guys in their defense, and that makes for fresh legs, and that's tough to face over a 60-minute game.
Well, it's the biggest game of the year so far, and you can see it in prime time on CBS. Jamie, you'll be in Tuscaloosa. What kind of game do you personally think we're going to see?
An absolute battle. Like I said, the fact that Alabama gave up 48 last weekend is not going to happen against Georgia. I mean, I could see a really low scoring, an absolute battle of the trenches. These linemen are fantastic for both of these schools. And honestly, both quarterbacks, Mac Jones, a little bit more experience for Alabama, but I'm very intrigued to see how Stetson Bennett can come in after 2 home starts. I know everyone's very high on his story, and I really like the kid, but he's got to go to Tuscaloosa at night this weekend. It is going to be a true test. I think the defenses will reign supreme, though. It'll be a fantastic matchup.
Jamie Erdahl, she'll be on the sideline. You can see her this Sunday on CBS. Number 3, Georgia. Number 2, Alabama. Thank you. Actually, that game is on Saturday. I don't know why I said Sunday, but it's Saturday. Of course, SEC football. Here's a look at the series history between the only 2 remaining unbeaten teams in the SEC. Alabama leads the all-time series 40-25 to go along with 4 ties. They've beaten Georgia 4 straight times. Bama dominant at Bryant-Denny Stadium. They're 33-1 in their last 34 games there. Meanwhile, Georgia has won 6 straight true road games. For more on this matchup, we welcome in CBS Sports college football writer Barrett Sallee and Sportsline analyst Emory Hunt. This is a possible SEC championship game preview. Barrett, what's on the line here for both teams?
Well, I think it's confidence because, like you said, SEC championship game preview. And for Georgia, you kind of know what they're feeling going in, obviously, with the national championship game loss in 2017 and the SEC championship game loss in 2018. They want to be Alabama. Alabama knows it's Alabama. So I think for Georgia's sake, if they're going to walk into Atlanta in December with a shot at beating Alabama in the SEC championship game, they have to gain that confidence. Now, that can come in a lot of different forms. It could come in having offensive success against this defense. It could come with a stifling defensive performance, or it could come with a win. It could come in a variety of different ways. But for Georgia, it's all about confidence. Obviously, they want to get the job done. But I do believe this is going to be the first of 2 matchups between these 2 teams this year. And as a result, it's all about learning. It's all about figuring out where those chess pieces go. And like Jamie said, these 2 coaches know each other very well.
Yeah, I think it's about a statement game for Georgia. They look at their 2-0 record and they have some questions. People look at the win against Arkansas and say, yeah, what you struggled against the Razorbacks. They look at their win against Tennessee and say, yeah, but it was Tennessee and it's not Alabama. So they want to have a win without any questions following it. And this is the type of game where you can make a statement if you're Stetson Bennett, if you're Kirby Smart, if you're a defense going up against a high-octane offense in Alabama. So I think for Georgia, it's a statement win. And for Alabama, it's about reestablishing the dominance on defense. We've seen this defense give up a ton of big plays, a lot of points. I think for them, it's about reestablishing what that Bama brand is about defensively.
Well, Nick Saban has never lost to any of his former assistants. He's a perfect 21-0, including a win last Saturday against Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. In your opinion, Emory, why can't the Luke Skywalkers beat Yoda?
I think because when you look at you're going up against a guy that taught you how to, I don't want to say how to play the game, but taught you the game. He knows a little bit about you more so than you know about yourself. So I think when guys go up against their old coach, whether it's in football or any other sport, they want to prove that they know more than the teacher. And we see this a lot with kids going up against their professors. But when you look at this game on a football field, I think that's why you see Saban have so much confidence in going up against his former assistants, because they're trying too hard to beat them that they end up making those little mistakes. They miss those minute details that help you win games. And a lot of times it's going to come down to special teams. So I think because Saban has seen it, done it, bought the T-shirt before, these assistants are trying so hard to beat these guys. They're pressing, and they go out there on game day and make mistakes.
Look, I just think it's all about recruiting, because when you look at the former assistants that Nick Saban has beaten, are they any good? Are those teams any good? Are those rosters even comparable to Alabama? The only one that you can say that for is Georgia, the last 2 times that Kirby Smart and Nick Saban met. Other than that, Alabama's just beating up a bunch of okay to good teams. Guess what Alabama does? They beat a bunch of okay to good teams every single time out. And a lot of times they beat excellent teams every time out, with the exception of maybe Clemson. So, yeah, I get it. You know, it's a nice stat. But in reality, Alabama's just doing Alabama. That's what they do. They're a really talented, really well coached, really solid team. And I don't necessarily think it has anything to do with knowledge of what each other will do. It's just that Alabama is a behemoth. End of story.
Barrett getting salty on that question. Calm down. All right, as for the game itself, give us your key matchup on the field to keep an eye on. Barrett, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, it's Alabama's defense or offensive line against Georgia's defensive line, because what Georgia's defensive line did to Tennessee and Auburn in back-to-back weekends, I mean, those poor offensive line. Tennessee's got a really good offensive line, and Georgia just annihilated them in the second half. Poor Jarek Garantano had absolutely no shot. You spin it forward to what Alabama's strength is in offense. Yeah, we can talk about receivers, quarterback, running back all day long. It's Alex Leatherwood and those big uglies up front. So that matchup, if Georgia can do what it did to Tennessee against this Alabama team, then they are going to have a shot. Not only a shot, they'll probably win the game. But we see what Alabama has done. Those offensive linemen, they open up holes for Najee Harris and Brian Robinson. They know what to expect from Mac Jones. And they, I think, are the unsung heroes of this Crimson Tide team. So I cannot wait to watch Dan Lanning, that defense for Georgia, specifically the front four, go up against this Alabama offensive line. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm going out on a perimeter. I look at the matchup between those Bama receivers and that Georgia secondary. I like Richard LeCounte, the safety out there. I think he's going to be tremendous. But you look at those corners and what they did last week against Tennessee. We saw Josh Palmer have a field day stacking and tracking the football and making two big plays in the passing game deep down the field. If those corners of Georgia allow Devonta Smith and also Jalen Waddle to get deep down the field, and we know Mac Jones has deep ball accuracy, I think it's going to be a problem for them in the passing game. So let's say at the line of scrimmage, everything is considered equal. They're having a stalemate there. If those receivers get a step on those corners, it could be lights out early for Georgia.
All right, finally, gentlemen, I'm going to end this with a triple-headed question. Emory, who wins, why, and by how much?
Alabama, because Alabama. And also, I think I lay the points with Alabama, but I do think we'll see this game look a lot like Georgia-Tennessee. So I'm going with the over here. I think Alabama will score in the 40s. Georgia will get 20-plus points in this ball game. Alabama's defense isn't as dominant as we've seen it before. Ole Miss exposed that. I think Georgia, with their playmakers and their ability to hit some plays and being able to get outside the pocket a little bit more than we saw from a Jake Fromm or someone like that, I think that'll give Alabama some problems early. So I say the over, but Alabama will win comfortably by more than 6 points.
Emory's right about the winner. It's Alabama. Emory's right about the point spread. Alabama will cover. He's wrong about the total because it's going under. And I'll tell you why. Alabama's defense is not as bad as what we saw against Ole Miss. Alabama's defense struggles against tempo. It always has. I think it always will. That's what Ole Miss does. It's not what Georgia does. Georgia takes more time. Georgia has a very inexperienced quarterback on the road. They're going to take this step by step. And as a result, Alabama's defense is going to be in its comfort zone. It's not going to be susceptible to the big chunk plays that Ole Miss was successful with last time out. So I'll take Alabama. I'll take Alabama to cover, and I will take the under because this will be a little bit more of an old school game than what we saw last week.
Either way, I can't wait to see it. Barrett Sallee and Emory Hunt breaking down all things Alabama and Georgia and our SEC Game of the Week, CBS, this Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Here's a look at the latest odds to win the national title. Clemson is the favorite at plus 200. They're followed by Ohio State, who's yet to play a game at plus 260. Alabama, plus 325. And then we have a big drop-off before Georgia hits the board at plus 1,000.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.